Good afternoon, everybody. I will be with you in just a moment. I will be right back. All right. Okay, sorry, I'm doing a couple of things real quick. Carrie, are you there? I need to talk to you about your makeup map session because you weren't there. So you need to come to your Zoom room for the Zoom room that we were in for the map testing to finish your tests, okay? That's today at 2 o'clock. Good afternoon, everybody who's here. We will wait just a couple of more minutes to see if we pick up anybody else. We're still getting a bunch of people in, so let's wait while they get in here. If you are here, please turn on your cameras so that I can see you. Thank you, thank you. There's Jasmine, there's Paige. So yes, if you did not go to, and a lot of people were missing from the map testing makeup sessions yesterday, you need to make sure that you go today, okay? So please attend. Let's get these finished. We want to get them finished today because you're required to do the study island stuff, regardless of if you are also spending time in testing, okay? So I want you to just get it over with, get it finished. Let's move on with our collective lives, all right? So if you have any questions, but show up today, get those tests finished. If you already finished, yeah, Sean, I know you finished, you're good. That's what I'm saying is that if you haven't, then please make sure to go today. I know you finished. I think, you know, there was a few people in our session because a few of you have me as your proctor who finished yesterday. But if you didn't get a chance, no, study islands for advisory, right? But you still have to do study island this week, even if you're taking the tests. So you kind of have to like do double duty. So let's just go ahead and get that stuff done. Let's see. Anybody that I'm missing? Jesse, can you go to a place that isn't a cave? Ayat, can you turn your camera on? Jasmine, can you turn your camera on? I think I've got, Rosalind's not here yet. No, she's not. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So yeah, if you didn't go yesterday, you didn't finish, make sure you go today. And let's get started. Okay, so enough about that. Schoology is intermittently up and down, all sorts of fun times, okay? So it is what it is. Not much we can do about it. If you need any, like if you were trying to submit anything like your SLA essay, you may want to wait until tomorrow when it's not just like a ton of people trying to all be on Schoology at the same time. We're assuming that that's what the problem is that it's just kind of like as every school district gets on, that Schoology just can't keep up, which is probably the truth. So let me open our thing for today. Your SLA essay, okay, I will go over it with you. So your SLA essay is just 300 words, all right? It is due by the, I don't want to give you incorrect information. Where is it? Oh, wait, I'm in the wrong. I'm in the wrong class. That would help. It's 300 words. It's due by the, I think I gave you guys until the 13th, right? So you've got a couple more days to finish it. Sorry, it's not letting me load in, so. Please, Schoology, just hang on for like 2 seconds, okay? It is about just using what we talked about in SLA and applying that to theater. That's all I want you to do, okay? Is take what we talked about in SLA, apply it to theater. And I gave you some hints, okay? Things like mindfulness, about like taking care of yourself physically, getting enough sleep. That's the kind of stuff that will be easily applicable. Okay. So all you've got to do is reflect back on SLA and apply those things to, you know what? I can't find it. I think it may have ate it. So let me import it from resources, and I'm going to give you until, let's do 9/14, next Monday. Okay. So I'm going to give you an extra day. So an extra day to do your SLA essay. Because I'm feeling frisky, I guess, something like that. And because it's not behaving. So an extra day. Yeah, the essay's about yourselves. Yeah, basically, right? It's not that difficult. It's not meant to trick you. Honestly, where this came from was because we had to have 3 summatives, and I could not figure out a way to do a 3rd summative that would give you actually like enough time to like process information. Okay. So I decided that really the best thing then probably to do would be to look at what we talked about during SLA and let's use that, right? So that's what we're doing. Okay, so I'm going to put it in the 9/14 folder, copy, easy peasy lemon squeezy. It'll now be in that next week. So it'll be due next Monday. All right. Monday. Monday at midnight, 300 words. I think it keeps eating it. This is very frustrating. It'll be in there by the time I will wrestle it into there somehow. Okay. So yeah, 300 words, just talking about sorry, I've got a panicked student who just emailed me 3 times in 3 minutes. Okay. Okay, we cool? Everybody's cool about that? Not a big deal. Yes. We Gucci. All right. All right. Sorry, we're getting started a little bit off today. It's a weird day. What a weird day we're having. So I'm not going to have you do your do now right now. I want you to do it. Now what's going on? I want you to do it, but put it in your journals. You should be able to review the PowerPoint in your journal. Put it in your journal. Make sure that you do it. But we're not going to do it right now because we just lost some time to Schoology being a wackadoodle mess. All right. So let's talk about ancient Rome. So ancient Rome did not hold theater in the same kind of regard as ancient Greece did. Okay. And I think you kind of already get a feeling for that. But part of the reason why that was, if you write in your journal and not online, you're going to have to find some way to submit it online every 2 weeks. So if you want to write it by hand, you can, but you're going to have to either take pictures of it or scan it or type it and submit it as well. So just I don't care. I just want you to know that you're going to submit it in Schoology every 2 weeks. Okay. So they had lots of other types of entertainment that were available to them that were very popular. 2 of the most popular that you may have already heard of or may already know about are the Colosseum and the Circus Maximus. So the Circus Maximum was where the races, the chariot races occurred, right? It was also where they would do equestrian performances. So basically anything that had to do with horses, that happened in the Circus Maximum. The other place where entertainment was often done was in the Colosseum. Does anybody know what the Colosseum was?
Wait, it was.
Yes, Isaac? You got cut off, I think.
Wasn't it the first theater or something?
It was not. The Colosseum was a place of spectacle, but it wasn't really a theater per se. So if you, Isaac, I don't know if you know, you can type it. I couldn't hear you, that is all. You got cut off. So the Colosseum, you may have heard of it before or seen it in a movie. Yes, good. Where the gladiator sort of fights would occur, right? Also where they would reenact historical battles. There's some rumors that even some naval battles would be reenacted there, right? So it was a huge, and it's part of it, right? It's crumbling, but part of it's still standing today. A huge stone structure where people would go to watch all sorts of fights. So as Rome, right, was going basically through all of Europe and then into Africa and over into Asia and conquering, they would sometimes capture some of the best warriors, and they would bring them back to Rome and sort of make them fight each other. It's okay, Emily, if you're having Wi-Fi problems, I understand. A lot of people are having Wi-Fi problems today and Schoology problems. But yeah, they would fight each other. They would fight lions. They would fight bears. It was a wild time, right? So very popular form of entertainment for most Romans. And one of the reasons why we know it was popular is because they built the building itself out of stone, right? They dedicated a lot of space in the Roman city, in the main Roman city, to this huge structure to house these fights and to house these forms of entertainment. Okay. So yeah, as long as we do, like, typically it's pictured as like a fight to the death, right? But as Isaac noted, it was more like until one person caved, right? Now, there were some things like Christians getting like eaten by lions where it was more like, we don't really care about these people, they're throwaways, like, let's just watch what happens, right? But the fighters were more prized, they were more like of higher status, even though they weren't Roman citizens, right? Okay. So when we do talk about Roman drama, however, we're primarily talking about comedy. Comedy was much more popular in Rome than tragedy was. And we don't know exactly why this is, but we do know that what they didn't use drama the same way that the Athenians did, right? We talked about Greek drama. We were talking about how the Athenians used drama to make their citizens better people, right? To try to make them better citizens. It was like an obligation to actually go to the festival and watch the plays and vote on which is best, right? Whereas in Rome, it was definitely about entertainment. So the first Roman comedian we're going to look at is Plautus. So Plautus wrote plays that were very, now we call them a farce, which means that they're very physicalized, they're very exaggerated. They are based on stock characters, which I will explain a little bit more of in a minute. And they are all domestic situations or based on romance. So what we call today a sitcom or a rom-com, a romantic comedy, right? Sitcom stands for situational comedy. But lots of physicality, lots of running around, super exaggerated acting, exaggerated humor. Now, we are still using all male actors, and we are also still using masks. Okay, so I just want to note that for you for comedy here in Rome. You hate most rom-coms. They're not particularly my cup of tea either. But, you know, they're written for a specific audience, right? And that's one thing that you always have to sort of keep in mind. And as I've gotten older, I have come to appreciate that, you know, not everything is written for everybody, right? So most of the time, if you don't like something, you're just not the target audience for it, right? Annie Hall. Oh, that is a good rom-com. All right, so what else did Plautus do? Well, his plays are based on Greek New Comedy, right? Now, we don't have actually any of the original Greek New Comedies. They survive through Plautus's work. So we're making assumptions about Greek New Comedies based on Plautus's work in Rome, all right? So what did he do to them? He just took the original scripts, basically, and he worked them around a little bit, right? He would add Roman allusions, add some Latin dialogue, mess around with the poetic meter, throw in a few witty jokes that would be specific to Roman audiences, right? And basically call it a day. So, you know, he was really just sort of stealing from Greek New Comedy, but he could get away with it. His plays often involve slapstick. So what is slapstick? Does anybody know what slapstick is? Have you heard of it before? Has anybody ever seen The Three Stooges? Laugh out loud comedies. Some laugh out loud comedies are slapstick. Yeah. Slapstick relies on a lot of physicalized humor, right? Slapstick also is what really you watched that last year. Okay. Yeah. The Three Stooges. Yes, Kyler, good. Yeah. Also slapstick influenced a lot of like early cartoons, you know, where like, you know, Wile E. Coyote gets like hit by an anvil, right? But you know that he's not like a real coyote. He's not going to get like he's back in 5 seconds, right? So like no matter what happens to the characters, like they're fine. Okay. That's sort of what we're talking about. Good. And he also had a lot of songs in his plays, lots of musical elements incorporated into his plays. So that's something that, you know, he sort of brought over from Greek New Comedy. Lots of music, lots of slapstick, big physical humor, right? People running around a lot. So what are stock characters? Does anybody tell me what a stock character is? Do you know? You remember? Okay, that's a good guess with supporting characters, but that's not what they originally were. Anybody else have a guess? Okay, so stock characters originally meant that they were really broad characters that don't have a lot of depth, right? So there are sort of generic characters, and a lot of these stock characters are found again and again in these plays. So, for instance, some stock characters off the top of my head, a pair of young lovers. You would have like a young, handsome man and a young, beautiful lady, a greedy old man. A smart servant was like a very popular character. Also, like a clownish servant, right? They don't change. They stay very static from beginning to end. They always just want like one thing that they're like laser focused on. Sort of like Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet might have a little bit more depth than stock characters, but you're not far off, right? They're like laser focused on getting one thing. Again, think about like cartoons, right? What's Elmer Fudd laser focused on? Basically every cartoon he's ever in. Killing animals, right? Hunting season, usually specifically Bugs Bunny, sometimes not, but a lot of the time, right? You know, they have one goal, they're going after that goal. That's it, right? So this may have influenced Comedia, which we will get to when we talk about Spain. But yeah, not a whole lot of variation from play to play to play. They're pretty much the same character no matter who's playing them. Make sense? Yes? Thumbs up if it makes sense. I see a couple. Yes, yes, yes. All right, cool. Okay. Now, let's move on to the other side of the coin with Terrence. All right, so Plautus, songs, slapstick, stock characters. Terrence, however, is going to write plays that are meant to be spoken. They're not as exaggerated. They're more literary. And he's also going to incorporate elements of wit. He's going to try to make people laugh through wordplay, right? And you're not just laughing at, like, you know, watching people run around in pursuit of, you know, love or money or whatever. So there's a little bit more of some nuance to these people. In addition, some information about Terrence that might be interesting to you. He actually came, he was born in Carthage. He came to Rome as a slave. He was educated by his owner and then freed. He wrote 6 plays, and we have all of them. So he didn't write a lot, but we have everything that he wrote. His plays are more complex. They combine stories from Greek plays, but he also comes up with some new ideas. But he does sort of place the characters in Greece. Why do you think that might be? Why would he put comedic characters in Greece instead of making them in Rome? Anybody have any ideas? Strategic, okay. Yeah, what else? It's funnier, okay, because we're not laughing at Roman citizens, right? But also, Terence is not from Rome himself, right? He's from Carthage. So he's not really, he's not a Roman. He's an outsider, right? So that may have been part of it too, okay? But also easier to avoid offending anybody if we're making fun of somebody from the outside, right? We're not making fun of Romans, we're making fun of Greeks, right? Those silly Greeks over there. Okay. Where's my mouse? There it is. So let's talk about mime. When you hear mime, what do you think? Clowns, okay. Silent, okay. French clowns, people in black and white. Yeah. Yeah, we have this idea of, like, you know, the guy in the invisible box, you know, with the French, like, wearing a striped shirt, right? Okay. Totally different from what mime was in ancient Rome. So in ancient Rome, mime was actually spoken. It was spoken word, and they could be serious stories or comic stories. 2 really important things about mime are that, number 1, they had female actors, and number 2, they did not use masks. So no masks, and we've got ladies on stage or in courtyards, depending on where they were doing the play at. Another thing about mime that may surprise you is that some of these stories were super violent. Some of these stories featured pretty explicit sexual content. They also openly mocked the Christian church, and as a result, the Christian church wasn't really a huge fan of mime. It's going to be one of the first things to get banned when Christianity comes to Rome is mime. They're going to get rid of it because they make fun of real people. They make fun of especially real people in the Christian church. They were not afraid to go there. So yeah, very, very different from what we think about today. When mime pops into your head, it's not this, right? It's usually like a guy pulling like an invisible rope and walking up an invisible ladder and stuff. Okay. Questions about this? I think we're moving on to tragedy next. Yes. Okay. Questions about mime, about tragedy, or about comedy. Pretty clear difference, right? So far between what the Greeks were really interested in with drama and what the Romans are really interested in. Okay, so let's talk about tragedy then. When we talk about tragedy in Rome, we usually talk about Seneca. Okay, he's pretty much the primary tragedian. Now, whether or not his plays were actually performed on stage, we don't totally know. It's quite possible that they were never actually performed and they weren't written to be performed. So, Seneca's plays do have a chorus. However, the chorus does not actually drive the plot, right? So remember in Greece, we were talking about how the chorus are acting like the actual citizens, right, of the place. They're requesting something. They want help. Okay. The chorus pretty much in Seneca's plays just comes on stage and sings a song either about what you just saw or what you're about to see. He also puts violence front and center on stage. So in Greek plays, they could talk about violent actions, but they couldn't show them. Seneca, he writes that right out. Like, yeah, beheaded, like this dude gets beheaded on stage. So that's part of the reason why it's like, well, did they make people like play that part and actually like did that to them on stage, or were these plays never performed? His works were very influential on people like Shakespeare, writers of tragedy in the Elizabethan era, because that's sort of when they were discovered and translated, right? So if you look at Richard III, if you look at Macbeth, not really Henry V, because that one's really not, well, that's not a tragedy. I mean, Richard III isn't technically either. But there's some like pretty graphic violence that happens on stage. He influences blah, blah, blah. Seneca is influential to those writers of that time. Yeah, Zachary, that's what we're talking about. It's very possible that during the Roman tragedies, if these were actually performed on stage, that we're talking about like real people had to like gouge their eyes out. When Oedipus gouges his eyes out, like that would have really happened. So that's why it's like, did they actually perform these? We don't know. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Other things about Seneca. So the actual play itself was made up into 5 episodes or acts, and there would be choral ode intermissions in between. Oh, I may have to mute myself in a second. My cat just saw another cat and she hates him. They would feature elaborate speeches by the characters. Okay. So they would go on these long monologues about usually things like morality or justice. Violence and horror featured on stage, unlike in Greece. And characters that were dominated by a single passion. So a lot of these characters are really obsessed over certain items, or like could be a concept like getting revenge, or well, getting revenge is like the most popular one. Finding someone, uncovering a murderer. So pretty different from Greek tragedy, right? Especially according to Aristotle. Yeah, we don't know if some of the people were like live murdered on stage or not. If the way that some of the scripts were written, then yeah, somebody would have had to like die on stage. So like, did they like make like somebody go out there and play that part? Who knows? Pretty gruesome. Okay, so let's talk about Horace now. Are we good? Do I need to go back? Go back? I see a couple go backs. Okay, going back. Why don't you not look at him? Just if you don't look at him. All right, let me know when we're good. That's the bad thing about Zoom, is that I can't like see you guys writing. Okay, a couple of you said you're good. Anybody still writing? Raise your hand. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, please do. Yeah, I wish I could see when you're writing and stuff. It's a lot easier in person. We good? Okay. Looks like most people are okay. All right. The PowerPoint is in Schoology, which right now you may or may not be able to get to, but I just want to remind you that it is there. All right, so in ancient Greece, we had Aristotle writing about tragedy. In ancient Rome, we have Horace. So he's sort of our equivalent, right? He writes the Ars Poetica, which I will place in the chat for you, where he basically says tragedy and comedy should be distinct genres, right? So tragedy should have no comedic elements and comedy should have no tragic elements. This is going to come back to those of you who remember the three unities and neoclassicism. That's going to come back in a big way in France in about, 1,000 years. Horace actually defines tragedy as a play or a type of play that should deal with royalty. He thinks it's going to mean more if we see people of a high class station sort of going through difficult times, right? So tragedy should be about royalty or generals, people of high society, whereas comedy should deal with, the common people, right? Write comedy about those silly commoners, right? Okay. So he encourages us to laugh at commoners, but make tragedy about royalty. Horace is also going to claim that drama should entertain, but he also wants it to teach a lesson, which does kind of reflect in Aristotle's Poetics about the theme, right? And also the idea of catharsis, where you should feel emotion. You should have a lesson, have a question that it asks you. Okay. So he's kind of expanding a little bit on what Aristotle said. Any questions about this? Is that clear? You see how it sort of expands on what Aristotle had said, right? Okay. So we're gonna watch, I think, a Crash Course Theater. Let me make sure I have my computer sound on. If you have poor bandwidth, you may want to turn your webcam off during this, okay? Which is going to just sort of go over again what we kind of just talked about, but in more detail, and give you some examples and a fun little thing about the Monachmai twins, which is a good play to reflect on. Oh, no, play.
Hey there, I'm Mike Rignetta. This is Crash Course Theater, and today we'll be looking at the surviving literature of Roman drama, because Roman life wasn't all naval battles, naked miming prostitutes, and Christians being eaten by lions. Sometimes you had to take a break and go watch a play. Much like Roman deities, the most popular form of Roman drama were comedies that borrow heavily from Greek originals, especially the comedies of Menander, with a little bit of Attilan farce thrown into the mix. These comedies are called fabulae palliatae. They have outdoor, urban settings and are filled with stock characters. The hero of the play is typically a type known as the adulas case, a young man who is in love with the girl next door, the Virgo, whom he can't marry because she's of dubious parentage, or he's in love with a prostitute, the Meratrix. Then there's the Senex, usually the father or the old man, who's either a strict miser or a louche skirt chaser. Other characters are the Servus, the wily slave, the Leno, the pimp, the Miles Gloriosus, the bragging soldier, and the Parasite, a slave character who sponges off of his master. Sometimes wives and maidservants appear too. These stock characters get themselves involved in stock plots, often a couple plots per play. Typical ones involve thwarted lovers, disagreement between parent and child, and mistaken identity, which is way easier to pull off when everyone is wearing masks. Sometimes there's a direct address to the audience too, kind of like a parabasis, and almost always there's a happy ending, at least for the lovers. Comedies with happy endings are Yorick's faves. He is a man of infinite jest, after all. Oh, sorry. Was a man of infinite jest. In the Roman plays, most of the people and settings have Greek names, which is either a hat tip to the original source or a real failure of imagination on the part of these writers. But even though the setting is ostensibly Greek, the situations and jokes about current events and even the street names are definitely Roman, especially in the works of Plautus. Plautus and Terence are the two guys we're going to be talking the most about. Why them? Well, partially because they were the greatest practitioners of Roman comedy, but also because, you guessed it, their plays survived. Titus Macius Plautus was born in 254 BCE in Umbria, a landlocked region with a lot of truffles. Legend has it that he worked as a stagehand in his hometown and then failed as a merchant before moving to Rome to write plays. 130 plays are attributed to him, but take that with a grain of Roman salt. A lot of writers tried to pass their plays off as his. A 1st century BCE scholar determined that 20 plays are definitely his, and get this, all 20 survive. More or less. It's fine. I'll take it. Plautus's plays are rambunctious comedies about middle-class people and their slaves. You could even call them musicals because from the meter they're written in, we know that at least half of each play was sung. He was a big influence on medieval and Renaissance writers. Molière was a fan, and we'll see that Shakespeare borrowed most of the comedy of errors from him. People love Plautus because his plays are energetic and uproarious with puns galore and tip-top alliterations that are tricky to translate. Plautus's works are a lot like real life with more prostitutes and twins and songs, which is to say, I guess, that they're not like real life at all, but they are a hoot. When he died in 184 BCE, he apparently wrote his own epitaph. After Plautus died, comedy mourns. The stage is deserted, and then laughter, mirth, and jest all wept in company. Okay, now tell us how you really feel about yourself. Yeesh. The other major comic playwright was Publius Terentius Afer, aka Terence, who's possibly the first playwright of color. Terence was born around the late 180s or early 190s BCE in Africa at Carthage, in a spot that's now a Tunisian suburb. He was a slave owned by a Roman senator who educated him and then freed him. He came to Rome to try to break into the theater by surprising a famous poet at his house. The poet was not thrilled, but then Terence began to read his play, and suddenly the poet was totally into it. Don't take too many lessons from this, though. I didn't get this job by showing up on Stan's doorstep with a stack of things to explain. It's not a great plan. Terence wrote 6 plays, which borrowed heavily from Menander. Cicero even called him a pint-sized Menander. After the 6th, he decided that he needed to travel more to write better plays, so at the age of 25, he left Athens and died at sea. His style is more sophisticated than Plautus's. The comedy is a little less rowdy, but the ironies are deeper. The characters are saner, the meter is more regular, and the constructions are sturdier. Fewer plot holes, fewer dirty jokes, some really elegant Latin. And the women aren't treated that badly, so that's nice. These are classier plays, but they're maybe not as funny. And hey, one more difference. In Plautus and Menander, the prologue basically tells you what's going to happen. Terence doesn't do that. He creates suspense. To take a closer look at Roman comedy, we're going to check out one of Plautus's plays, the Menachmi, or the Menachmus Twins, which we selected because Shakespeare borrowed most of it for the comedy of errors. The Menachmi begins with a prologue addressed directly to the audience. An actor comes out and tells everyone, hey, listen up, this is Plautus. You love Plautus. Give it up. Give it up for our man Plautus. The prologue tells us that once there was a merchant from Syracuse who had identical twin sons. He took one of those sons to Epidamnus, where the son was kidnapped, and the merchant died of a broken heart. Both boys eventually end up being called Menachmus, which is a little weird, but hey, you do you. For simplicity, we're going to call them M in the thought bubble. Years after their poorly fated trip, Syracuse M comes to Epidamnus searching for his brother, Epidamnus M. Epidamnus M is infatuated with a prostitute, Erotium, a name that basically means sexy. He keeps giving her all of his wife's stuff, which, understandably, makes his wife mad. Epidamnus M and his parasite servant go to visit Erotium. He gives her one of his wife's dresses and tells her to prepare a feast. And then he goes away. Syracuse M comes in, gets mistaken for Epidamnus M, and gets to eat Erotium's feast. And he's all, this place is rad. But somehow it never occurs to him that maybe he's been mistaken for the identical twin brother he's been searching for 6 years. Yeah, there are some plot holes. After the feast, Erotium gives Syracuse M the dress and tells him to take it to the tailor. Meanwhile, Epidamnus M's wife is like, why do you keep giving all of my dresses to your prostitute? So he tries to get it back from Erotium, and she's like, dude, I just gave it to you. Then his wife sees Syracuse M and mistakes him for her husband. He doesn't recognize her, so she tries to have him arrested for craziness? and maybe dress stealing. Just then, Epidamnus M enters, and the two identical brothers see each other, but it still doesn't occur to Syracuse M that this is the brother he's been looking for. Luckily, the smart servant figures it out, the brothers are reunited, and Epidamnus M decides to auction off all of his stuff, including his wife, so he can return with his brother to Syracuse. Thanks, That Bubble. So yeah, it's absurd, sexist, heavily reliant on stock characters and stock situations, but still funny. Not all of Roman drama is quite so hilarious, though. Take the work of Seneca the Younger. Please. Haha, just a little comedy for you there. Seneca Jr. is born Lucius Annaeus Seneca in what is modern-day Cordoba, Spain in 4 BCE. That's just a little while after Horace publishes the Ars Poetica, the first major work since Aristotle's Poetics to tell people what plays should be. Seneca's dad was a big deal rhetorician, and when he was young, he was moved to Rome to study Stoic philosophy because there's nothing the kids like more than Stoicism. He came to adulthood during a pretty volatile time in Roman history. Little Seneca, who grew up to be another big deal rhetoric guy, kept running afoul of emperors, which was easy to do because a lot of them were dangerous psychopaths. Caligula almost executed Seneca, then Claudius banished Seneca on the grounds of adultery. Claudius's wife called him back and installed him as a tutor for Nero, who became emperor, and kept Seneca on as a counselor. But then Nero went a little crazy, and even though Seneca was retired, Nero blamed him for taking part in a conspiracy and ordered him to kill himself. So Seneca did. Man, Stoics. Ew. When Seneca wasn't being threatened by emperors, he sometimes wrote plays, which are mostly revisions of classic Greek works, and they're all tragedies. One possible exception is his Apocalypsentosis, a satire about the emperor Claudius that no one really likes and which maybe he didn't even write. In general, Roman tragedies based on Greek subjects are known as fabulae crepidatae, and there were lots, 300 years worth, but basically Seneca's are the only ones that survive. Seneca's tragedies are notable because they're the first to favor the 5-act structure that Shakespeare would adopt. They have a different relationship to the divine, with a lot less confidence that the gods are going to help everything work out, which is to say they're pretty dark. It makes sense when you remember all of the scary, violent emperors who were ruling Rome during Seneca's time. Nero was as merciless and arbitrary as even the most capricious god. And remember all that stuff the Greeks liked to keep off stage? Like, say, really extreme and incredibly gory violence? That's just the kind of thing Seneca wants to show. Because atrocities, especially those perpetrated on the weak by the powerful, were facts of life in his society. And also a regular feature in violent entertainments like gladiator fights. So if you've ever thought, hey, I'd really like to see Oedipus blind himself and maybe he could actually tear out both of his eyeballs, man, I have got a play for you. But not you. You don't have eyes. Because of scenes like that one and the fact that Seneca was a high-class kind of person, there's been a lot of debate about whether his plays were actually performed or whether they were closet dramas meant to be read rather than produced. Certainly some of the scenes, like the cannibal meal in Thyestes, would have required special effects, but let's not put some creepy props or even extreme violence beyond the limits of the Roman stage. Remember, these are the people who thought that a group of dwarves beating a woman with spiked clubs was just normal entertainment. Check us out next time for a survey of ancient Sanskrit theater. And then, theater's gonna disappear for a while, at least in the West. Until then, curtain. Crash Course Theater is produced in association with PBS Digital Studios.
Okay, so what did you think? What do you think about the Crash Course Theater? What did you think about sort of that particular dissection of Greek or Roman theater? Okay, explain, Isaac. More cool but very weird about Roman theater? Yeah. It's a very interesting time, right? Because we're looking specifically at the capital of Rome. But they're importing so many people to the capital, right? from all the places that they're conquering, and they're importing stuff from all the places that they're conquering, that their culture is really based a lot on war and all the stuff that they liked from all these different places. It was crazy. Okay. So let's talk about stock characters. We've kind of talked about this already, and it says modern theater, but let's just talk about modern media. Can you think of any other example of where you see stock characters in modern media? Rom-coms? Yeah, we do see it sometimes in rom-coms, right? You know, they write about like, oh, it's like a lawyer from the city who comes back to the small town that she was from and decides to quit to open up her own bakery and meets a lumberjack, right? What else? We talked about cartoons. Are there any other? Was that a movie? There's this meme about Hallmark movies, right? And that they're always like a woman who like comes back to a small town from like a big city and like meets this guy that she went to high school with, etc. Right? Any other types of entertainment where you see a lot of stock characters? Sitcoms, yeah. Yeah, we do have a lot of stock characters in sitcoms. Good, Natalie. A lot of entertainment for children, right? Oh no. Henley, please. Okay. What did you notice about the playwrights that they were talking about? What were your observations about Plautus and Terence and Seneca? Yeah, Isaac, that's a good example. There are some people specifically who like write or get cast in those roles, right? Were you surprised about what happened to Seneca? No? I always find it surprising. There's a lot of evidence of people who are like their judgment was like that they had to commit suicide. Like that was kind of a common thing if the emperor sentenced you to death, it wasn't like sentencing you to like be killed, it was sentencing you to kill yourself. Right? They talk about that with Seneca. Yes, you can, Zachary. Actually, go ahead and because we only got 3 minutes left. So, okay. So, we're not gonna do the thing. We've only got 3 minutes left. Make sure I'm gonna make sure that the essay is up. Like I said, Schoology is acting up. So if you can't get to it today, that's why I'm gonna give you an extra day, so it won't be due until midnight on Monday. All right. If you have any problems with it, you have any additional questions, I think the exit ticket was for last time, right? We had an exit ticket last class, didn't we? You probably won't be able to see it right now in class content. I'm going to put it in. I'll show you where I'll put it if Schoology is going to behave. It's going to be in class content, and it's going to be in the 914 to 918 folder. Okay. Yeah. Oh, the do now. You just got to put it in your journals, right? The do nows go in your journal. So put the do now in your journal. So your homework is to put the do now in your journal and work on your SLA essay that's due on Monday. Okay. Your journal, the journal that you're keeping for the whole class.
No, I mean where, like, I didn't see the do now. Where was it?
You put it, it's at the
I know where
beginning,
to put it. I mean, where is it actually?
the beginning of the PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint is in, oh, where is it? Oh, did I delete it? Well, that's weird. Let's use this what do you think slide then. Let's use the what do you think slide as the do now. I don't know what you mean by online. Here. Yeah, we'll use this slide, the what do you think slide. Put that in your journal. That'll be easy. This should be your second entry, right? Let me double check from lesson 1. Yeah, this is your second entry, okay? So if you want to keep a handwritten journal, you can. However, be aware you are going to have to turn it in Schoology every other week. So I'm fine with you doing it. However, you'll either have to take pictures of it, or you'll have to scan it, or you will have to then type it up to submit it every other week. But if you want to do it by hand, that's okay. Any other questions? Because we're at time and I want you to get your full lunch before you have to do more testing. Sure, that would be fine. Screenshots and just put them all together. Okay. All right. If you have no questions, you are dismissed. If you do have a question, type it in the chat or come off mute and we'll talk about it. I'm going to stop sharing. Figure out where that summative, that SLAS I went to. You have a good day too. Bye, Zachary. Okay. All of the do nows are journal entries that you'll put in your journal to submit every other week. Okay. So if it says do now, put a date on it, write your entry, and keep going with those entries. And every other Friday or whatever our last day of class is, you're going to be submitting those in Schoology. Does that help? Okay. So if you want to do it on a notebook, you can. But when you turn it in, you're going to either have to scan those pages in or take pictures of them with your phone in order to submit it. Okay. But I'm fine if you want to write it out by hand. Make sense? Okay. Holy moly.